Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Career Dev Podcast. So, taking a short break from the ABCs of Career Development, and wanted to share on this episode with you some feedback that I had for somebody on their recent resume that I took a look at. And I'm not going to share specific details, but a lot of the feedback that I gave to this person anyone could use and could leverage. So let me dig in and get started. So when I got this person's resume, it was one page. This person had, let me see, experience back to 2018, so that's 7 years. And then also prior to 2018, for about 4 or 5 years before that, some additional relevant experience. Free work through a consulting club at school, and some opportunities to do internships and things like that through schooling. Had a master's degree, a bachelor's degree, a certificate / certification through a technical company, and a lot of technical skills, and wanted to really make sure that the professional skills were going to shine through. Looking for a job in a technology field in a specific industry, and wanted to hone in really on a more of a job that required some leadership of projects or products in that respect. And so when I got the resume and I started to look at it, the first thing I noticed was it was one page. There was a ton of information. It was a very small print. I would say it may have been a 10 font size, but there was even some things that are tinier at the very bottom. It was a very full page. There was some underlining and boldface, which helped certain sections stand out, and the person's name at the top was larger. So they had their name at the top, they had their phone aligned with their phone number, their city and state, email address, and their LinkedIn URL, which is awesome. So still use that. What I did do is put in between their name and their contact information is identified a headline to use on the resume itself. Helps them to stand out a little bit more in that field. And definitely leverage ChatGPT, an AI tool, to give me, I asked for like 10 options based on some information that I fed it. And I would be cautious whenever I work with AI tools like ChatGPT or Gemini or anything like that. I take away any kind of identifying information or change those out, typically taking them out completely, to make sure that doesn't get into any other kind of information that people can access. Making sure that's secure, the information that I'm feeding to get back. So I had like 10 different options. I did end up using one of them. I have considered in the past, and I've actually done in the past, where I merged two different ones together because I liked pieces of them. So that turned out, I thought, really well. Then moving down, the first thing that the person had on their one-pager was their education, which they have a really good education, their master's degree from a well-known university, and but the type of job that they're looking for, while that education is meaningful and supportive, it would not be the first thing that I highlight in the resume. So I ended up taking that information and moving it down. It actually ended up being on the second page, more towards the bottom of the second page, because there was some more pertinent information to put higher up and on that first page of the resume. So the other thing is the person only had their master's listed. They did not have their bachelor's listed, which you typically assume if you have your master's, you got your bachelor's also. The person had space across the two pages, so I did add their bachelor's in. They could have left it out if they wanted to. It was in the same field as their master's, so I just added it in because spacing-wise, it ended up looking a lot nicer, and it was fine to have it in. So the next thing is, one other thing before we go on is there was no professional summary. So the resume started out with their education and then started to go in from there. So what I did was underneath that headline, so you have your name, your headline, your contact information, and then I had a professional summary section and was able to put together some things related to the person. As I mentioned, they were in specific types of tech roles and decided they wanted to go into a little bit different levels and types of tech roles. So not necessarily people leader, but product leadership, those types of things. So I ended up putting about that the person had experience and skills related to what they were doing, and they were desiring to move into a role like this or this, and talking about the transferable skills that that person had and their ability to be able to move into that type of role. So from there, I went into a skills section. I wanted to make sure for this person that we were highlighting specifically that they did have a lot of professional skills that could apply to these types of product roles. So I started out it was titled Areas of Expertise, and I put professional skills first and listed those separated by commas. I want to say there's maybe 10 or 12 at most there, not a ton, but making sure what are the most important ones to pull out, and also using job descriptions for those types of roles that person wanted, and matching with their experience and their skills and what they said what they had, to make sure that we were accurate in what we were putting there. In that same section underneath, I had a technical skills, and then that was, I had bullets underneath that technical skills one, and I actually made the bullets little check marks. I did it on another recent resume, and it looked kind of neat and different, stood out from the traditional bullet point. And for technical skills, what I have liked to do for anybody in those technical roles that have a ton of technical skills, because you only have a certain amount of space on a resume and you want to be cautious of how you're using that, I did grouping. And I am not highly knowledgeable about some of these, so I did leverage my AI tools to help me with grouping, and then I rely on my client to validate that those groupings are correct. They have been incorrect in the past. One thing was out of place or needed to be put somewhere else, or they added some additional ones once they saw how they were grouped. But with the groupings, it has the check mark for the bullet point, it has the name of the grouping. So it made, like, say, cloud computing, and then a colon, and then, like, what are the programs or coding or whatever it is related to that category after that. So they may have, like, 3 or 4, they may only have 1 or 2, something like that. So it ends up being, I want to say, like, maybe 5 or 6 groupings that are there, and it just looks nice. It's pleasing to the eye. It gives you a lot of information in a very short space, which is really helpful. So after highlighting those skills, and I just want to remind you that for this particular resume, I looked at what's the circumstances, what's the experience, the skills, the role that they're in, or the roles that they've had, and then what are they looking to get into, and what do the skills, experience, the job descriptions, the language, those types of things look for to help very much make this resume customized, not only in the content that was in it, but in the order of what flowed in the resume. So by no means am I saying every resume should be in this exact order. A lot of it depends on where you're coming from, where you're going, and kind of talking through that and figuring those things out, and looking at job descriptions for roles that you're interested in to kind of figure out what's some of that content to help fill in, or even to help you to think about what are the gaps that maybe some things you need to work on and get some basic proficiency in, or be able to explain that you have experience in, because maybe the language is not the same from where the roles that you've had to the type of roles that you're going into. So definitely could be very customized based on the client and their needs. This is just one example I'm sharing with you. Not to say that the information that I'm sharing could not be used for a lot of people, especially the layout, the formatting, and just thinking about the different pieces of the resume. So we have the skills section. The next section I want to touch on, we went into on this resume, was work experience. So this person had 2 prior jobs. One was 6 or 7 years, and the other one was, I think, a year. And then before that, they were in college, and they had some relevant experience that was unpaid during that time in college that related to the type of work that they have done and are going into. So I actually had 2 sections. One was work experience, and I had those 2 roles there. We made sure that in the bullet points, this person already came to me with the resume. They had really nice bullet points, the way that they talked, the language that they used, the quantifiable accomplishments that they used. And so it was very minimal tweaking for this person's bullets. One of the things that I was looking at was what's some of the terminology in some of those product type of roles, and do we need to tweak things a little bit to make sure that it aligns and is a match to some of that terminology. So we had the section with the work experience, and then the next section, I did make it an additional section. It was called additional relevant experience. And here I highlighted one that was, I think it was like 2 years, and it was in that college time frame, doing some consulting work, and it was pro bono, free, and listed that almost like I did list a job role up in the prior section. And then I just put, it was like 2 sentences underneath saying also held the role of X while at X university and X while at, or Y while at Y university in specific club or something like that. So really did high level, just like 2 sentences, kind of summing that up, because I didn't want to take a whole lot of space, even though I did have the 2 pages. But I also did not want that additional relevant experience section to outweigh visually the work experience section. So the nice thing with the work experience section is that first job that was like 6 or 7 years had plenty of bullet points, great job with the quantifiable accomplishments and the terminology. So lengthwise, it looked pretty good. And I was just cautious with that additional relevant experience, not to do anything to make that seem like it was more than the work experience that the person had. The next section was education and training. Now, I do this different depending on a lot of the variables with the person, the job they're coming from, what they bring to the table, education, training, certifications, licensures, all of that. So this is never, I'm not going to say never, it's typically not always the same. There are some people that it is the same. So I would list the education, so the bachelor, the master's degree information, details here. We did leave the year on them because they were still, I would say, relevant and timely. And I also grouped the training in here, which was, I was challenged because I believe it's a certificate. I don't believe it was a certification. And I believe it's one of those that you get, like I had gotten a LinkedIn and Microsoft certification for AI through LinkedIn Learning, or I got a certificate for this through LinkedIn Learning, and I believe this was the same type of thing. It was not AI, it was something else. And so I listed it in that section and called it training. Now, even though that training was more recent than the person's master's degree, because typically you go most recent to the least recent, I ended up putting their master's, their bachelor's, and then had a little bit of a space so you could tell, and then put that, what I'm going to call a certificate. It wasn't clear in the language of it. I put that underneath and listed the year, the month, I think it was just the year maybe that they got that. So I didn't want to list that training at the top because I felt like it almost downplayed that master's degree, and I really wanted that to stand out. So if somebody's quickly scanning it, they're not thinking, oh, this person, like, not seeing that degree first, they're just seeing that the training piece, and that's why I put it in that order. Most people would tell you put the most recent first. In this case, I didn't feel that was appropriate. And then the last thing on this person's resume was languages. And what we ended up doing was the section was called languages and listed I think there was 4 different languages, and also we listed it just on one line, all of the languages separated by commas, and after each language, before that comma, to separate it, in parentheses, I put what type of proficiency. So for the first 2 in parentheses, it said native proficiency, and for the last 2, for each of those, I put basic proficiency. So they had an understanding of the language. They weren't like kind of native speakers in it. So to be able to show that. I would say on the second page, we probably have a quarter of the page left blank. And I know this freaks people out to have too much blank space on their resume and feeling like it doesn't say they're qualified enough. And I'm really interested to see the feedback that I get from this candidate, and I hope that that's not the case. I think sometimes people think they have to have a one-pager and then jam all of the stuff on it, and it makes it overwhelming for a recruiter or hiring manager to look at. So the spacing, the white space, it's perfectly fine that this person has this white space. It's not a whole lot. Typically, if there's more than half a page of white space on the second page, I worry about, like, can we tweak the formatting? Are there other things that we need to think about incorporating? Does it make sense for this to be a one-pager instead? Like all of those things. So this one I was fine with. The one thing I do also is when it goes on to a second page, instead of repeating the header, for this person's resume, on the top right, I write aligned, or it was their last name, comma, space, page, and then space, and then 2. So if they got disconnected, if somebody was printing them by chance, that they would be able to match it to that person's resume. So just wanted to walk you through what that looked like. I will say, I'm trying to think of the person's original resume. I know they had the skills kind of jammed into the bottom of their one-pager, and it was very tiny print. It felt tinier than the rest of it. So as you can hear from what I'm saying, you're not seeing it visually, but I moved that skills section and made it more prevalent, because skills that person had are going to draw the eye of the recruiter as well as their experience, and that they're looking to move from where they are into these types of roles. And here's the transferable skills that they have. Here's the other skills that they bring to the table, and then their work experience overall. And then if they want to continue going, they can go on to the next page and kind of see education, things like that, and the languages and whatnot. So that is just I would say, kind of a quick walkthrough of kind of what I got versus what I changed that into at a high level, giving you insight on a little bit about the content, more so about the formatting and the order and that person's scenario without giving too much away about that client. So if you are interested in getting your resume looked at, I have services that range from do it yourself all the way to done for you. So I do have 2 services that are popular, are the resume audit, and this is where you send in your resume and I would give you detailed feedback and comments on the document, and you would take it and you would work on corrections, and then I look at it one more time and give you more feedback. And the second option is a resume refresh, and in this case, I look at the resume you have, or if you don't have one in a while, I have questions that I can ask you to have you provide some insight, and then I create it from scratch for you, and we have 2 rounds of feedback, and then you get different versions of the document, like a PDF, a Word document, an applicant tracking system if you happen to need that, some instructions on how to use that. So I also have a Rock Your Resume course. So it's an online course and it walks you through a lot of the different sections. So if you're not looking to have any of the services and working directly with me, that may be another opportunity. So if you're interested in any of these, please message me. Typically, LinkedIn is the best place. Tracy Schroyer, PhD, is how you can find me on LinkedIn. Or feel free to email me at learn@tracyschroyerphd.com. Or as always, you can find all of these services and more at careercompassusa.com and click on the services tab and you'll be able to find that information there. I hope that information is helpful and I will see you all later. Bye.